Hello everyone, in this video I will talk about what are the desirable properties of a refrigerant. That means whatever refrigerant we are using to run our refrigerator or air conditioner or water cooler, it should satisfy some properties. It should satisfy some requirements. That what are the requirements? There are set of requirements are there. One is the thermodynamic properties, second one is the chemical properties, third one is the physical property, and fourth one is the environmental requirements. In thermodynamic properties there are several parameters are there. That means whatever refrigerant we are using, it should satisfy that criteria. In chemical properties also several parameters are there. In physical properties also there are several parameters are there, and in environmental requirements also there are several parameters are there. Our refrigerant what we are using to run our system, it should satisfy all these characteristics. Okay, there is no refrigerant which is perfectly ideal. So whatever refrigerant we are using to run our system, there are some lacunas are there. Okay, so we'll deal with what are the properties that are required. Okay, so desirable properties of a refrigerant. First one is the thermodynamic property, second one is the chemical property, third one is the physical property, and fourth one is the environmental requirements. First we'll deal with these thermodynamic properties. First we'll deal with the thermodynamic properties. So first point under this thermodynamic property is the critical temperature. So what should be the critical temperature of the refrigerant we are using to run our system? So critical temperature of the refrigerant should be very high. Critical temperature of refrigerant should be high. So and it should be at least greater than the condensing temperature. Okay, the critical temperature of the refrigerant should be high, and it should be at least above than that of the condensing temperature or condenser temperature. So critical temperature of refrigerant should be as high as possible, or at least above the condensing temperature and pressure. So if you see here, I have shown a cycle here. This is a PS diagram. If you see the, suppose this 1 2 3 4 cycle 1 2 3 4 is one cycle, and cycle 1 5 6 7 is another cycle. Suppose I have a system, suppose I have a refrigerant whose critical temperature is here. Suppose I have a refrigerant whose critical temperature is here, and my cycle 1 2 and my cycle 1 5 6 7 is here. 1 5 6 7 is here. Okay, but my refrigerant critical temperature is here. As the condenser pressure and temperature is here, so this, if I use this refrigerant to run my system, as the condenser pressure and temperature is above than the critical temperature, so what is the problem will there? Inside the condenser, the refrigerant will not condense. There will be no phase change of the refrigerant in the condenser, because the critical temperature of the refrigerant is much below than that of the condenser pressure and temperature. So my cycle, if I draw the saturation curve, it will look like this. Okay, so this is the problem if we use a refrigerant whose critical temperature is less than the condenser pressure and temperature. If you use these types of refrigerant, then inside the condenser, the refrigerant will not condense. So cycle should run far away from the critical temperature. So another point is the cycle, the thermodynamic cycle. What we will design, it should run far away. It should run far away than that of critical temperature. If you see the cycle 1 2, if you see the cycle 1 2 3 4, if you see the cycle 1 2 3 4, see what is the refrigerating effect here we are getting. This is the refrigerating effect we are getting here. Okay, similarly, if you see the cycle 1 5 6 7, if you see the cycle 1 5 6 7, you will see the refrigerating effect is here. So you can see what is the change in refrigerating effect. So the cycle should run far away from the critical temperature. So what is the point here? The critical temperature of the refrigerant should be as high as possible, and it should be above the condensing pressure and condenser pressure. Okay, and our cycle should run far away than that of the critical temperature. Now the second thermodynamic property is the specific heat. Second thermodynamic property is the specific heat. So our refrigeration cycle, in our refrigeration cycle, the refrigerant changes its phase from liquid to vapor and from vapor to liquid. So in case of vapor, in case of the vapor state of the refrigerant, the specific heat should be high. If the specific heat of the vapor is very high, then what will happen? The degree of superheat will be low. In case of liquid, the specific heat should be low. In case of liquid, the specific heat should be low. So we can increase the degree of subcooling. If you increase the degree of subcooling, then the refrigerating effect will increase. If you increase the degree of subcooling, then the refrigerating effect will increase. So, and also low specific heat in the liquid state. Low specific heat in the liquid state also limits the degree of irreversibility. So you'll see here, specific heat of vapor should be as high as possible in order to limit the degree of superheat. Okay, if you superheat the refrigerant, then what will happen? The compressor work input will increase. If you superheat the refrigerant, then the compressor work input will increase. Okay, and in case of liquid, the specific heat of the liquid should be low to increase the degree of subcooling. If you increase the degree of subcooling, then the refrigerating effect will increase. Then what will happen? The COP will increase. And low specific heat of liquid also limits the degree of irreversibility. If the specific heat of the refrigerant in the liquid state, if it is low, then the irreversibility will be also low in the system. So for vapor, Q is equal to mc delta T, that is heat transfer is equal to m into mass into specific heat into change in temperature. So specific heat C is equal to Q by m into delta T. That means if you increase the specific heat, then the degree of superheat, that is delta T, will decrease. Okay, you see here this blue, if you see the red color line here, this is the degree of superheat here. Okay, so if you increase the degree of superheat, then the compressor work input will increase. Okay, so delta T is the degree of superheat and C is the specific heat. Similarly for liquids, Q is equal to mc delta T. Then similarly C specific heat is equal to Q by delta T. That means if you decrease the specific heat, then what will happen? Then the degree of undercooling will increase. If you see the diagram here, this is the cycle without undercooling. So what is the refrigerating effect we are getting here? This is the refrigerating effect. Okay, then now what will happen? The cycle will run with subcooling. Then what is the cycle? Then this is the cycle. Okay, so what is the refrigerating effect now? This is the refrigerating effect. So we are increasing the refrigerating effect by decreasing the specific heat of the liquid. So it will ultimately increase the COP of our system. Now, if you see, again we also know from the TDS relationship, that is TDS is equal to dH minus VdP. Okay, so at constant pressure, then dP is equal to 0. If it is a phase change process, then dP is equal to 0. That means in a phase change process, pressure is constant, so change in pressure is equal to 0. So TDS is equal to DH. So DH is equal to how much? CPdt. DH is equal to how much? CPdt. So we can write CP is equal to T into ds by dt. We can write here Cp is equal to T into ds by dt. That means if you increase the specific heat, then what will happen? The entropy will increase. If you increase the specific heat, then the entropy will increase. So irreversibility will increase. That means irreversibility in the system will increase. So what is our requirement? That means in the liquid state, the specific heat should be low. That means in the liquid state, the specific heat should be low. If the specific heat is low, then change in entropy will be low. Then the irreversibility will be also less. Okay, so ultimately it will increase the performance of the system. Now next property is enthalpy of vaporization. Next property is the enthalpy of vaporization. Okay, so to get better performance of the cycle, the enthalpy of vaporization of the refrigerant should be high. So enthalpy of vaporization, it should be high as possible, because for same refrigeration capacity, the mass flow rate is reduced. That means if the enthalpy of vaporization of the refrigerant is high, to get same amount of refrigerating effect, the mass flow of the refrigerant will decrease. If you increase the enthalpy of vaporization, then to get same amount of refrigerating effect, then the mass flow rate of the refrigerant inside the system will decrease. If the mass flow rate of the refrigerant will decrease, means the system will be small. There will be no bulky system. So this is the refrigerating effect is equal to how much? Mass flow rate of refrigerant into the enthalpy of vaporization. Refrigerating effect is equal to how much? Mass flow rate of refrigerant into enthalpy of vaporization. That means if you increase the enthalpy of evaporation, that is HFG, and our refrigerating effect is constant, then what will happen? Then the mass flow rate of refrigerant will decrease. Okay, and it is written here, if you increase the enthalpy of evaporation, then the mass flow rate of the refrigerant will decrease. If the mass flow rate of the refrigerant will decrease, means our system will be small. It will not be a bulky system. So among all the refrigerant what we are using, ammonia has the highest value of enthalpy of evaporation. Whatever refrigerant we are using nowadays, among that, ammonia has the highest value of enthalpy of evaporation. But problem with the ammonia is that it is toxic. So it is not used. So ammonia has higher value of enthalpy of evaporation among commonly used refrigerants. Whatever refrigerants we are using, ammonia has the highest value of enthalpy of evaporation. Next thermodynamic property is the thermal conductivity. So the thermal conductivity is required. See, in the condenser and in the evaporator, there is heat transfer is occurring. So that means whatever material we are using to manufacture condenser and evaporator, the thermal conductivity of the evaporator and condenser material should be very good or very high. Okay, if the thermal conductivity will be high, then the area requirement will be less. So it should be as high as possible. Thermal conductivity should be very high. Higher value of thermal conductivity helps in reduction in size of evaporator. If the thermal conductivity is high, then the size of the evaporator will be less. It will not be a bulky system. We know from Fourier's law of conduction, Q is equal to K A dt by dx, where K is the thermal conductivity, and A is the area. So that means if you increase the thermal conductivity, then the area requirement will be decreased. So the system will not be a bulky system. Okay, that means we can reduce the size of evaporator and condenser. Next one is the evaporator and condenser pressure. Next property is the evaporator and condenser pressure. Remember that the evaporator and condenser pressure should be positive pressure. It should not fall in vacuum pressure. So both the evaporator and condenser pressure should be positive. Okay, but the condenser pressure should not be very high. It should be positive, but it should not be very high, so that we have to use a big compressor. If you are using a big compressor to achieve that higher pressure, means the system will be bulky, then the running cost will be very high, then the COP will be lost. COP will be less. Okay, it should be positive, but it should not be too high. If the pressure is very high, then we will require a big compressor. Otherwise, system will be robust and operating cost will increase. If the pressure requirement is high, that means we have to use a high capacity compressor. So it will take a higher amount of electricity, then the running cost will increase. That it is about the condenser pressure. Now come to evaporator pressure. If evaporator pressure is less than atmospheric pressure, then chances of leakage of air will be present. That means inside the evaporator we are maintaining low pressure. You are maintaining low pressure, that doesn't mean that you have to maintain vacuum. If you are maintaining if vacuum is created inside the evaporator, means from the atmosphere air will leak into the air will leak into the evaporator. It will create problem. So in the evaporator and in the condenser, the pressure should be positive. If you are creating vacuum inside the evaporator, means there will be chance of leakage of air will be there. Okay. So evaporator pressure should be kept almost equal to atmospheric pressure to avoid leakage of air. Okay. Next property is the compression ratio. We know the work input to the compressor. Is proportional with the compression ratio. That means if you are maintaining a high compression ratio, means the work input to the compressor will increase. That means we have to supply more electrical energy we have to supply. That means the cost will increase and it will decrease the COP. So lower value of compression ratio is desirable, because higher compression ratio results in increase in work input to the compressor. That means if you increase the compression ratio, then the work input to the compressor will increase. Okay, so the cost will increase. Higher compression ratio also decreases the volumetric efficiency. Okay, and we know if the compression process is a polytropic compression process, then T2 by T1 is equal to P2 by P1 to the power n minus 1 by n is equal to V1 by V2 to the power n minus 1. And we know for polytropic process n is greater than 1. And this V1 by V2 and this V1 by V2 term, this V1 by V2 is called as what? It is your compression ratio. This V1 by V2 is called as what? It is your compression ratio. And we know work input to the compressor. Is equal to n by n minus 1, where n is the polytropic index. Work input to the compressor is equal to n by n minus 1 whole into P1 V1 whole into P2 by P1 to the power n minus 1 by n minus 1. Okay, that means if you are increasing the compression ratio, that is V1 by V2, if you are increasing compression ratio, that is V1 by V2, then what will happen? Then the P2 by P1, that is the pressure ratio, will increase. If the pressure ratio will increase, if you see this expression, if this term is increasing, that means the compressor, then the compression work input will, and then the compressor work input will increase. That means whatever refrigerant we are using to run our system, it should have less amount of compression ratio. If the compression ratio is high, that means it will require higher amount of work input. That means the cost will increase. Okay, and also if you take the case of volumetric efficiency, here we know volumetric efficiency, that is eta V is equal to 1 plus C minus of C whole into P2 by P1 to the power 1 minus 1 by n. This is the volumetric efficiency, where C is the clearance ratio, that is equal to clearance volume by soaked volume of the compressor. That means volumetric efficiency is equal to 1 plus C minus C whole into P2 by P1 to the power 1 by n. Okay, if you are increasing the pressure ratio, then the volumetric efficiency will decrease. That means if you are using the compression ratio, increasing the compression ratio, then the pressure ratio will increase, so it will reduce volumetric efficiency. The next thermodynamic property is the freezing point temperature. Next is the freezing point. Okay, so we are using refrigerant to produce less temperature. Suppose my requirement is in my refrigerator is minus 5 degrees centigrade. My requirement temperature in my evaporator is minus 5 degrees centigrade. Suppose I am using a refrigerant whose freezing point temperature is 0 degrees centigrade. That means inside the system, the refrigerant will get freeze. If the refrigerant will get freeze inside the system, inside the pipeline, then it will not produce refrigerating effect more. Okay, so whatever refrigerant we are using, it should have very low freezing point temperature. Suppose my requirement is -5, that means the freezing point temperature of the refrigerant what I am using my inside my refrigerator should be around -30 degrees centigrade, -40 degrees centigrade, in this manner. So the freezing point temperature should be low. The freezing point temperature should be low, and the refrigerant should not freeze under the required evaporator temperature. And the refrigerant should not freeze, and it should not freeze under the required evaporator temperature. Okay. Next is refrigerant must have freezing point well below the operating evaporator temperature. That means whatever the evaporator temperature, it should be very less than that of evaporator temperature. Okay. Otherwise, what will happen when the refrigerant will come from the expansion device, its temperature will reduce and it will start to freeze there. Okay, then the cycle will not work. Then we will not get any more refrigerating effect. Now we'll see next thermodynamic property, that is a COP. Okay, so for every refrigeration system, the COP should be high. If the COP is high, then the running cost to run the system will be less. So COP, it represents the running cost of the refrigerator. It represents the running cost of the refrigerator. Higher COP will give you the lower running cost. Higher is the COP, then the running cost will be less. That means if your COP of the system increases, then the running cost will decrease. Okay, so that means it is always required that the COP of the system will be high. Okay, next thermodynamic property, that is a normal boiling point temperature. Normal boiling point temperature. And normal boiling point temperature of the refrigerant should be low. Normal boiling point temperature should be low. Okay, if the normal boiling point of the refrigerant is very high, see, normal boiling point temperature means, that means at 1 atmospheric pressure, what is the boiling point temperature? Normal boiling point temperature means at 1 atmospheric pressure, what is the boiling point temperature? If the normal boiling point temperature of the refrigerant is high, that means to boil the refrigerant at low pressure, to boil the refrigerant at low temperature, we have to reduce the pressure. Okay, now if the normal boiling point temperature of the refrigerant is high, that means to boil the refrigerant at low temperature, we have to reduce the pressure. We have to reduce the pressure of the refrigerant. That means if you are reducing the pressure of the refrigerant, that means there is a chance that vacuum will be created. Okay, vacuum will be created. If vacuum will be created, then it will be create problem. If vacuum will be created means, then we know for vacuum there will be no heat transfer will occur. Okay, so it will create for problem for the refrigeration system. So normal boiling point temperature of the refrigerant should be low. That means at low temperature it will start to boil. If it is high, then to reduce if the normal boiling point temperature of the system is very high, then to boil the refrigerant at a low temperature, we have to reduce the pressure. If we are reducing the pressure means there is a chance of creation of vacuum. Then if the vacuum is created, then it will always create problem. Okay, then it is all about what are the thermodynamic properties required for an ideal refrigerant. Okay, next we'll see what are the chemical properties requirement. Next is the chemical properties. Okay, next is the chemical properties. First chemical property is the toxicity. First chemical property is the toxicity. The refrigerant what we are using, it should not be toxic. The refrigerant what we are using, it should not be toxic. Okay, but there is a common refrigerant, that is ammonia, which is toxic in nature. We know ammonia has higher amount of enthalpy vaporization, but the problem is with the ammonia is that it is toxic in nature. Next chemical property is the flammability. Next chemical property is the flammability. And the refrigerant what we are using, it should not be flammable. Okay, it should not be flammable, or it should be non-flammable. Okay, both ammonia is both toxic and flammable. Ammonia is both toxic and flammable. It is very dangerous to use ammonia as a refrigerant. Second, the hydrocarbon refrigerants what we are using. Hydrocarbon refrigerants what we are using, they are also flammable in nature. Hydrocarbons are flammable in nature. So it is also the problem with the hydrocarbon refrigerants. The refrigerants of hydrocarbon family are highly flammable. So this is the problem with the refrigerants of hydrocarbon family. Next is the action with oil. That means what are the refrigerant we are using, how they are reacting with the compressor lubricating oil. As inside the compressor there are moving parts are there. So to reduce the friction inside the compressor and between the moving parts, we are using the lubricating oil. When refrigerant flows into, or when refrigerants come into the compressor, it mixes with the it comes in contact with the lubricating oil. So we have to determine what are the characteristics of a good refrigerant. Refrigerants should not react with the lubricating oil. Refrigerants should not react with the compressor lubricating oil. Some refrigerants are there which are completely miscible with the lubricating oil. Some refrigerants are there which are completely miscible with the lubricating oil. Some refrigerants are there which are partially miscible with the lubricating oil, and some refrigerants are there which are not miscible with the lubricating oil. Some refrigerants are fully miscible with oil, and their example is R11 and R12. R11 and R12 are completely miscible with the lubricating oil of the compressor. Some refrigerants are fully immiscible with oil. That is your ammonia and carbon dioxide. They are immiscible with the lubricating oil. But some refrigerants are there which are partially miscible with oil. Example is R22. And these partially miscible with oil, these types of refrigerant which are partially miscible with oil, they creates problem in the system. Inside the system. We'll see that. When lubricating oil is carried by the refrigerant of immiscible type, when the lubricating oil is carried by the refrigerant of immiscible type, it forms a coating over the heat transfer surface. If the refrigerant is immiscible with the lubricating oil, when it flows through the condenser or evaporator, then it forms a coating on the surface. Then it forms a coating on the condenser pipe surface or evaporator pipe surface, and hence it reduces the heat transfer capacity of the evaporator. So refrigeration capacity decreases. If there is a oil coating over the evaporator surface, then the heat transfer capacity of the evaporator will decrease. The oil will decrease the heat transfer coefficient. So in that manner, the heat transfer inside the evaporator will decrease. So it will decrease the capacity of the refrigerator. So in place of natural oil, we'll use synthetic oil. In place of natural oil or mineral oil, we'll use synthetic oil. And to separate the oil from the refrigerant, we'll install oil separator between the compressor and condenser. So oil separator is used or installed between the compressor and condenser. Oil separator is installed between the compressor and condenser. Okay, next is, so if we use the oil separator, then what will happen? When the refrigerant will come out from the compressor, then the oil separator will separate the oil from the refrigerant and it will return back to the compressor. Okay, and this oil separator is used when the refrigerant is partially miscible with the refrigerant. Okay, next is the action with the material of construction. That means how your refrigerant is acting, or how your refrigerant is reacting with the material of the refrigerator. That means inside the pipes, inside the refrigerator, that is your compressor, inside the compressor or in the condenser or in the evaporator, the refrigerant is flowing. When it is flowing, how it is reacting with the materials, we have to decide. if you use ammonia as your refrigerant, and you are constructing your refrigerator or your pipelines are made up of copper and cuprous alloys, copper, brass, like that, then ammonia attacks with copper and cuprous alloys. Okay, but these types of alloys, if you use if your pipes are made up of copper has very higher amount of thermal conductivity, so its performance will be good. But if it is made up of copper, then if you are using ammonia as a refrigerant, then ammonia will start attacking on copper material. So this is the problem. But copper has advantage that it has higher amount of thermal conductivity, so it will give you higher performance. So whenever you are using ammonia as your refrigerant, so we cannot use copper, and copper based alloys. So what we can use? Iron and steel, or wrought iron. We can use iron, steel, or wrought iron for the construction. So ammonia attacks copper and copper based alloys. So favorable material is iron, steel, and wrought iron. Next category is freon or halocarbons. Freon based refrigerant or halocarbons. This freon or halocarbon based refrigerants attacks aluminum. Freon or halocarbon based refrigerants attacks aluminum. So what is the favorable material? Favorable material is copper, brass, zinc are the favorable material, or cuprous alloys are the favorable material if you are using freon or halocarbon based refrigerant to run your system. So if you are using freon or halocarbon based refrigerant to run your system, you cannot use aluminum. So favorable material is what? Copper, brass, zinc. But aluminum has advantage is that aluminum is light. If you are interested to make your system light, then you can use aluminum. But problem is that you cannot use freon or halocarbon based refrigerant if your material of construction is aluminum. So this refrigerant will start attack aluminum. Okay. So these are what are the construction material and how they are reacting with the refrigerant. Next is the physical properties. What are the physical properties required for a good refrigerant? What are the physical properties? First thing is, we are always interested to cut our cost. Our investment should be low. So cost of the refrigerant should be low. Then viscosity should be low. If the viscosity of the refrigerant is low, then to flow the refrigerant inside the system, it will require less power. Okay. So if the viscosity is low, it can be easily flow inside the system. Next physical property is the leak detection. It is a very important property. What leak detection? If there is leakage of refrigerant inside the system, so that it can be easily detected, so that anyone can easily detect that the refrigerant is coming out from the system. So it should, whatever refrigerant we are using, there should be no leakage. Primary requirement is that there should be no leakage. Or suppose due to any problem there is some leakage. If there is some leakage occurs, then detection should be fastest and by simplest way. Okay, very quickly you can know that there is a leakage of refrigerant from our system. Now how to know there is a leakage of refrigerant? Halocarbons or freon leakage is detected by halide torch. By use of halide torch, you can know that whether there is a halocarbon based refrigerant or freon based refrigerant is there is a leakage of these types of refrigerant from your system by use of halide torch. So by using halide torch, the leakage of halocarbon and freon can be detected. Similarly, so what will happen if you use halide torch in the presence of freon? Then the light of the halide torch changes from blue to bluish green. If you are using halide torch to know whether there is a leakage or not, then what will happen? Then the color of the halide torch will change from blue to bluish green. Okay, color will change from blue to bluish green. Then ammonia leak is detected by sulfur stick method. Ammonia leak is detected by sulfur stick method. Okay. So in the presence of ammonia, in the presence of ammonia, white color in the presence of ammonia, white color ammonium sulfide is formed. In the presence of ammonia, then what will happen? Ammonium sulfide will be formed. So ammonia leak is detected by sulfur stick method. Sulfur stick method is used to detect leakage of ammonia. So in the presence of ammonia, ammonium sulfide will be formed. Then sulfur dioxide leakage is detected by ammonia swab test. Sulfur dioxide leakage is detected by ammonia swab test. So these are the chemical properties and what is a leak detection methods for different types of refrigerants. Now next property is the environmental requirements. Next is the environmental requirements. Okay. Nowadays this environmental requirement is the very important. Okay. Everybody is concerned about global warming and ozone layer depletion. So nowadays environmental requirement for before choosing a refrigerant is very important. So whatever refrigerant we will use to run our system, it should not put a very high impact on our environment. So two environmental parameters are there. One is the ozone depletion potential, ODP. Second one is the global warming potential, that is GWP. So two environmental parameters. One is the ozone depletion potential. Second one is the global warming potential. So whatever refrigerant we will use, we will try to minimize these two potential. Whatever refrigerant we will use, we will always try that these two potential, ozone depletion potential and global warming potential, should be very less. And best example is ammonia, that is R717. Best example is R717 or ammonia. It has zero ozone depletion potential and zero global warming potential. It is the best refrigerant for environment. But the problem is that ammonia is toxic. So that we cannot use it. So everybody is aware about chlorofluorocarbon. These CFC based refrigerants depletes ozone layer. Chlorofluorocarbon based refrigerants depletes the ozone layer because the presence of chlorine will deplete the ozone layer. And HFC, hydrofluorocarbon, this hydrofluorocarbon based refrigerants has a zero ozone depletion potential. Remember, if in the refrigerant chlorine is present, means it will deplete ozone layer. Okay, it comes under chlorofluorocarbon. But in HFC, hydrofluorocarbon, there is no chlorine. So ozone depletion potential will be zero, and there will be a small value of global warming potential. So CFC based refrigerants, chlorofluorocarbon based refrigerants, depletes ozone layer. Then hydrofluorocarbon, HFC based refrigerants, has a zero ODP, zero ozone depletion potential, and very small amount of global warming potential. So to determine what is the ODP of a refrigerant and what is the GWP of a refrigerant, what is the ozone depletion potential, of a refrigerant, and what is the global warming potential of a refrigerant, we have taken two reference. R11 has ozone depletion potential of 1. And similarly carbon dioxide has global warming potential value is 1. So this is just taken as reference. And R717, that is your ammonia, has zero value of ODP and zero value of global warming potential. R744, that is the carbon dioxide. It has zero ozone depletion potential but global warming potential of 1. So in this manner we have different types of different refrigerants, and we have to know what is the ozone depletion potential of a refrigerant what we are using and what is the global warming potential of the refrigerant what we are using, so that we can choose the best refrigerant for our environment. So best refrigerant best refrigerants for the environment, that is the R717. R717 is the best refrigerant, but the problem with the R717, that is the ammonia, is that it is toxic in nature, so we cannot use. Similarly, R744, it is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide has 0 value of ozone depletion potential but 1 value of global warming potential. This carbon dioxide is used for mobile refrigeration purpose. Mobile refrigeration purpose it is used. So this is all about what are the properties of an ideal refrigerant, or what are the properties required for a good refrigerant. Some refrigerants will satisfy some properties and they may not satisfy some other properties. So we have to choose the best refrigerants depending upon our requirement. Okay, there is no refrigerant which is perfectly ideal. Okay, so we have to choose the best of the best refrigerants for our purpose. Next we'll see that which refrigerants are used for which purpose. So refrigerants and their application. R11 is used for large centralized AC units. For central AC units we are using R11. Similarly, R12 is used for domestic refrigerator and water cooler. R12 is used for domestic refrigerator and water cooler. Similarly, R22 is used for window AC. R22 is used for your window AC. Similarly, NH3 ammonia is used for the cold storage. NH3 is used in cold storage. Carbon dioxide, that is R744. It is used for direct contact freezing of food, and production of solid ice, production of dry ice or solid ice. Then brine is used in chilling plants. Milk chilling plants use brine. Then next is air as a refrigerant is used in aircraft, refrigeration system and gas liquefaction system. So most often time they ask question about what is air in the gas liquefaction process, which refrigerant is used. The refrigerant is your what? It is your air. So air is used for aircraft refrigeration system and gas liquefaction system. Okay, so this is all about what are the properties of an ideal refrigerant. Okay, so we can choose the best refrigerants for our requirements and which refrigerant is used for which purpose. So thank you all. This is all about the refrigerants and their properties. Thank you all for your attention.